Coming to you from the Freedom Federal Credit Union Studios, Harford County Living presents Conversations with Rich Bennett.
Slow pitch
I never played
It's probably the least sexy part of the organization. That's okay. No.
The truth is,
Have you ever finished a book and just sat there for a minute because it felt a little too real? Like the characters weren't just fictional, but reflections of people you've known or maybe even parts of yourself. Today's guest is someone who understands that kind of storytelling. Tory Gates has been crafting young adult, new adult, and contemporary fiction since 2013, building worlds that take readers from exotic destinations to everyday coffee shops, all while tackling real-life issues that matter. He's the award-winning author of How the Story Ends, the Sweet Dreams series, A Moment in the Sun, Life from the Cafe, and a whole lot more. And even his newest one, Legend of the Black Swan. But Tory doesn't just tell stories on the page. He spent more than 4 decades behind a microphone as a journalist, regional anchor for NBC News Radio, podcast host, and producer, from fiction to medical journalism, from broadcast news to independent publishing. He lives at the intersection of storytelling and truth. And if you're wondering where the best ideas are born, there's a very good chance it involves strong coffee and a quiet corner table. So you know what I'm going to say? Grab your coffee, tea, bourbon, whatever it is you're drinking. If it's early in the morning, hopefully it's just coffee or tea or hot chocolate. And sit back because you're really going to enjoy this. How's it going there, Tory?
Well, I can't complain too much, Rich, and thank you for the intro and for having me on.
Oh, you can always complain, but nobody's going to listen.
No.
Isn't that how it always works?
Yeah, pretty much.
All right, so I want to talk about the shift from broadcaster to novelist. What actually pulled you from reporting facts to creating fictional worlds?
Well, it was a very short step, and yet it took several years. And I mean, when I started broadcasting, I was still in college. I was still a freshman in college, and I just very luckily landed a weekend shift somewhere right as I was getting started, and I was able to just kind of do that. And I was a radio geek. I mean, it was the first thing in my life that had never been handed to me, and it was more like, this can be yours if you want it. And I'd always been fascinated and interested in radio, but never thought I could do it. And the long story short was I thought I was going to be a DJ for a long time, and I did just about every music format there was, but eventually things changed, and I learned you have to adapt to the business and to the jobs that are available. So, I mean, after a few years of doing that, I started writing. I mean, I was writing news copy, and I was one of the news people for my college radio station. I started writing sports copy for a morning show news guy just to help him out and to have something to do. And after a while, I got a chance to do news for a small station. I got a chance to start producing other people's shows. And I suddenly realized that, hey, I can do different things here. So the writing and the storytelling is something that you do it when you do a break as a DJ. You do it when you're doing a news story. You do it when you're just talking to someone. And you learn over time how to tell a story with a certain amount of conciseness, or if you need to elaborate. And anyway, I had done that for several years, and I got an idea to try to write something longer. In the 90s, I had written a sci-fi novel, and it was pretty awful. And it was basically it was kind of like Star Trek fan fiction, only with different names. And my highfalutin idea of what kind of space and universe I would create never really went anywhere. Right. And I even had an agent take a look at it, and she initially liked it, and then they basically told me everything that was wrong with it. And I just put it away, and I just kind of forgot about it. And in the mid-90s, my life changed. I was married. I had some different work, and I was just busy all the time.
Right.
I still continue with my radio career in different levels and so forth.
Mhm.
And I just suddenly found an opportunity. It wasn't until 2007 that I suddenly had the opportunity to actually sit down a little bit and have some time to think and have some time to try an idea out. And I had these really weird threads of a story. And you talked about the Sweet Dream series. This is where it all began.
Yeah.
I had 3 or 4 weird ideas, and I started trying to put them together. And the title of the first book of the trilogy, Searching for Roy Buchanan, stuck as a title. And I didn't know why. And then all of a sudden, this thing wrote itself in about a month. And I have not stopped writing since then. It's not an I thing, but I have not quit writing since then. The process just keeps coming, which is really cool. And it took a few more years before anything was published, but it has happened. And for me, it's a side hustle, yes, but for me, it's an extension of my creativity. It's the best use of my spare time, and it's an awful lot of fun.
That's one thing I've always wanted to try, but never have yet. I mean, I've tried it, but it's like I'll start writing and then put it down. I guess sort of like what you did. Eventually, I'm going to get back to it. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but Parasite Girls was your first book, right?
Yes, this was self-published. I published it through Amazon and through what used to be called Smashwords, and I think it's now Drafted Digital or something like that. And that's like a digital platform of any type. You can get the book there. I had written that in like 2010 or 11, and I decided that would be the first book I put out. And it was because a close friend of mine said to me, after all these things that I was continually writing, she said to me, you got to kick one of your birds out of the nest. You got to self-publish because no one's going to listen to you. No one's going to pay any attention to you. You need something. And I thought, well, you're right. So Parasite Girls was very simple because it had only 4 major characters. It was a fairly quick read, and I felt that it would be understandable by a lot of people. And we got a fantastic cover artist. My friend Alice passed me along to an artist named Michelle Bentley, who is now retired, but she did all of my covers up to how the story ends, and that, not including that one. But Mitch was an amazing artist, and we had a cover. We had, and then I was like, how do I do this? Well, you throw it out there, and then you just try to find places to do it. And Parasite Girls reflected my writing at that point because it's set in Japan, and the basic story is very simple. It's a burnt-out American journalist named Aiden who nearly got killed on his last assignment. So on a whim, he goes to Japan, and he hooks up with an old friend from college, and he falls back into this woman's life. And the term Parasite Girls is a rip on the term parasite single. That's an actual term. Parasite single was come up with by a Dr. Yamada. I think his name is Hiroshi Yamada. And he reflected years ago on the idea that now in Japan, there's very set structures on life. You either live alone, or you live with your family, or you get married and so forth. He had noticed that a lot of young people, particularly women, after they finished school, and even if they got jobs, were still living at home with their parents. They weren't going out and trying to find a place to live. They weren't trying to get married, do the traditional things. And he called them parasite singles, which to me was unfair because everybody has a reason for that. So Aiden's friend is kind of sort of called that. And this person, Mima, her best friends, are considered parasites. Well, Aiden thinks everybody's got a story, and my job is to tell them. So as he's trying to figure out how to remake his career because he's disgusted with what he's turned into, and he starts falling into each person's lives, everybody has a reason for the things that they do. And I was able to look into Japanese society, mostly from a distance, but with some research, and also tackle mental illness, tackle health issues, tackle why do people do
Ooh.
things the way they do. And it turned out fairly well. I think there were some cultural errors, but minor ones at best. And I mean, I didn't sell an awful lot, but it got some interest. And it eventually led me to Sunbury Press Books a couple of years later, who later signed me. And away we went from there.
So what did that first book actually teach you about yourself when you're writing it?
Well, I'd already completed manuscripts, but now it said to me, okay, you have done it. You've got it. You've got the book in hand. Now what are you going to do? And you turn to all of your varied promotional ideas that you've picked up through your life. At the time, for several years, I had played in a local band called Altira. We were kind of like a new age rock band. Okay. And we had split in 2010, around the time the book came out, I think. And I stuck together with a couple of my bandmates. We changed our names to the Dharma Fools, and we leaned over toward folk rock and some original tunes and things like that.
Nice.
And I got this idea. We played, my bass player, Jennifer Shira, and I played a place. And I told her this idea. I said, I want to read little passages of the book, like during our set. And she was like, okay. And so what she did was, Jen is an amazing musician. We did this in a rehearsal. I just started reading. She puts the bass down. She picks up my guitar and she just starts noodling and starts improvising under it.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, do that. And we did that a few times. It didn't sell any books, but people thought it was kind of different and it was kind of interesting. Yeah. And I thought, here's a way to try. And, you know, you try to use social media. You try to pump your sources different ways. You talk to your radio friends and see if they'll do an interview and that sort of thing. And it's a process that I have repeated over the years, but I'm always trying to augment it and make it a little bit different. And with each book, you have something more to talk about. So that's really how I do it.
That's pretty awesome. I would have never thought about that, but I like that idea, reading the book and playing underneath. And one of the latest things, well, I'm sure it's been done for years, but you're starting to see authors make book trailers, video book trailers too, which I think is brilliant.
Yes.
Now they just need to start getting on more podcasts or radio and, you know, to promote the books.
I have made a few of them. I made ones for the Sweet Dreams series.
Okay.
And I am not a video person, and I can audio edit. I can electronic edit. Right. I can edit tape. You know, I was one of the last to learn razor blades and tape and all that. So it's like, I can do that. Oh my God,
the reel-to-reels.
I can do that, but it was like video was really hard for me.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of work. I mean, I'm glad I did it. But at the same time, I thought, and now what's even better is, while I don't care too much for social media as it's become on TikTok, on some of these other video platforms, and on Instagram, you can put together in no time little trailers, little ideas. And those, if they're really short and they're to the point, they will get attention. And you have to sort of get over the fear of, oh, is this going to be obnoxious? Is this going to be a pain in the ass? Is this going to just keep doing it? But it is how you do it. And the repetition catches more people, and you hope that more people are like, hey, what is he doing? What is this? You know, and you go for it for that.
Yeah. And the other thing is too, with social media, even with doing the trailers on that's the whole thing. It's got to grab somebody's attention.
I try different things.
Which will keep it coming back up in people's feeds. Otherwise, it just goes away and you don't see it. And I think Facebook, if I'm not mistaken, they just started to where now, or maybe just for live video, but when you do a video, it's gone within, I want to say like 30 days. That might just be for the live ones.
I think that they have done that, and they've been doing that recently. And I quit Facebook and Twitter last year because I just got sick of it. And to borrow a phrase, it didn't draw me a dime. I don't think it ever really resulted in any sales. I mean, the one thing it did was it did let people know that, yes, I'm still alive after all these years and that this is what I do. But I just kind of switched over to some different platforms, and I try to focus on those, and I try to focus a little more on the people that are in my circle, and let's see if we can push that out. You know, and see if maybe a few more people do it. The other thing, of course, and I think you would agree, is the visual appearance, getting out there and getting into the book fairs, getting into conventions, and going into writers' conferences. That also is a huge help.
Yeah. I had a young lady on, and now she actually hosts her own podcast. But she was on a few years ago. She wrote her first book, and she was talking about how what she's doing is just going on all these different podcasts throughout the world. And I forget how, she contacted me a little bit later, and before she wrote her second book, and she was telling me how just going on all the different podcasts helped her sell like thousands of books. Just getting the word out there, because you're getting out it's just like radio. You know, with radio now, granted, usually you're in that local market. But with podcasts, it's going worldwide, and and the best part, it's free.
Yeah.
You don't have to pay to get onto a podcast.
Well, you shouldn't have to. There's a few out there that'll do that, but yeah.
Yeah.
And I have to admit also that, I mean, I was skeptical of the podcast idea when it came about several years ago. I really didn't, being an old guy, I was just kind of like, oh, come on, this isn't broadcasting. But then the more we started hearing them, and when Lawrence Knorr, our publisher, asked me to host one, and I am now I'm co-hosting another one, and I'm producing the ones that Lawrence does. I was kind of like, dude, the last thing I want to do is a talk show. I said,
right.
The one thing, I'm old enough now to say no. And I was just like, I mean, I've hosted public affairs shows. I've been on talk shows. And the last thing I want to do is host a show where the host insists on doing all the talking. I can't stand it. And he said, well, make it the show that you want. And so I was like, okay. And I thought about it, and I said, all right, let's have a couple. I'm an author. This person's an author. I'm going to let this person talk, tell about their books, tell about their influences, and we'll just have a good talk. And I'm happy to say that after these several years, it's finally starting to feel really smooth. It's starting to feel like now I can listen better, and I am able to learn so much from authors, especially authors of other genres and styles, because, each person is different. Each person's influences are different. And while you might read some of the same books, you're coming from different angles. And that only makes you better. The more you read, the more you listen.
Oh, yeah. That's one of the things I love about, talking to different authors. And I've done an authors roundtable before, where I've had several different authors on, and they learn from each other. Talking about the research part, their writing styles, especially the marketing. But yeah, it's a giant network.
Yes, and it's sometimes you find a place that doesn't really work for you, but like you might go to a writer's group and you find out that you're not really getting anything out of it. That's okay. Go find another one. Go find someone else to talk with. And eventually you find the people that will encourage you, and you can help each other out. And I mean, for me, when we talk about, I think we know each other from Book Fair at Bel Air. I'm going to be back there this year. I've always had a blast there. A lot of book events for me, I'm not so much concerned with how many books I sell as to how many people I can meet that I can make friends with that might pick up my books, if not today, maybe down the road. But also it's the people you talk to, that you talk shop with, that you do trade grenades with. Here's my book. Let me have yours. And we sign each other's books. That's how I get guests for my podcast. This is a secret. And they're fun, and it's so much fun to go to those. I've gone to different conventions, different events, and it's always fun to just talk to people and find out what they're reading, find out what they are interested in. And even if they're not into your kind of thing, it's like, okay, can I sell you on trying something a little bit different? Because I realize my books are an acquired taste, and I don't think there's anything terribly revolutionary or terribly outrageous in most of what I do, but I will tell stories. Some of them are my stories. Some of them are someone else's. And I just try to tell good stories. And I hope that people get entertained, but also maybe they think a little bit. Maybe they find a
Right.
person they recognize in there. Maybe they see themselves. And maybe that'll help them in some way or inspire them to write their own thing.
So do any of these people inspire you to write, create these different characters? Because you guys are pretty cool characters.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I try really hard to create organic characters.
Okay.
The very few of my characters are based on one or two people. And a lot of it is coming from my own experience, my own sort of examination of myself at various times in my life, but also the people around me. And one of the things I do, we talk about coffee. Well, I spend an inordinate amount of time in coffee places, writing, editing, but I'm also watching. I'm not quite the guy that just sits there with a cup of coffee and stares at people. I'm not that guy, but I'm always listening. I'm always listening to the people who walk through. What are they talking about? And I'll look at them and be like, okay, what do they look like? What are they wearing? And I immediately think, hey, that looks like somebody. Yeah, she could wear that. That's the kind of outfit she might wear. Or she might look like that. That guy looks like someone. And I'll just sort of keep those in my head. And eventually they show up. One of the fun things about character creation is I always look for what in my mind comes about with a character. And then if I get like an initial image, I think, all right, who is that? Is that somebody I know? What's the story with them? Sometimes a character just pops up in my consciousness and says, put me in your book. And I have to look at them and be like, okay, who are you? What do you want? And, you just build over time, and very slowly the character sketches come about. The details of what they're like come about. How do they talk? How do they dress? What do they look like? Is there something they do or say that makes them stand out? And what I try to do is everyone has a story. Everyone has a reason to be in there. And you might only see someone for a scene or two, but they've got a reason to be there. And I just kind of like lock them together like Legos.
So has a character ever actually surprised you or even taken the story somewhere you didn't expect?
Yes, that's happened quite a few times.
Okay.
I think probably one of the most interesting ones. Searching for Roy Buchanan is the first book in the Sweet Dream series. This didn't come out until 2019. It took many years and many rewrites to get that thing out. The second book in the series was called Call It Love. And one of the characters did exactly that. A character named Kia popped up right in front of me, completely formed. Look at me. And I'm like, who are you? I didn't know who it was. I had just finished the first book or that draft. And I thought, well, I can't use you in this one, but maybe you can come in the next one. And Kia very slowly became this very intriguing person who figured in the life of Aki, the main character, and helped drive the music that runs all through the series. And Kia became someone who not only became kind of like a foil for Aki, she became herself. She became a very real person who got her opportunity to show that there was so much more to her that I didn't know about. And as I wrote that story, we find out here is someone who's got a whole backstory. It fits with the rest of the story, and it augments the story, and it explains so much more, and it makes the story deeper. And that's the kind of thing that comes only once in a great while. You get a person that just becomes so dynamic. And in my new book, Legend of the Black Swan, there is a character. The main character is a girl named Arisa. There is a side character that years ago when I started trying to write this story, I sent off the first 50 pages to an agent. The agent gets back to me and says, your side character, this musical student, this friend of Arisa's, she needs to be more dynamic. And I said, she becomes more dynamic as the story progresses. It's a person who is a character all herself, already seems fully formed, and yet you can tell something's not right with her, and she very slowly asserts herself and takes charge of things, her life and some of what's going on around Arisa. And she never takes over. She never butts in. She never pushes her way through. She just finds her place, which will help her, but also help Arisa and help drive the story. And she becomes that dynamic character, not in the first 50 pages, but as it goes on, you just watch this person, her strength just comes up out of her, and it makes everyone better. It makes the story far better.
Wow. So how long, actually, I want to go back to the first one, Parasite Girls. How long did that take you to write?
Parasite Girls, I think the first draft probably took a couple of months. My assembly process can take a long time. Usually when it comes to an idea, I let an idea cook in my mind anywhere from a few months to a couple of years, because I want to make sure I'm not repeating myself. And I'm like, all right, what's going on here? What's this idea? Eventually, when it starts to take shape, I'll just start sketching out characters. I'll do full rundowns of the characters that I've got, their names, what do they look like, what are their habits, and then I'll start to try to fit them together. And then eventually I will do like a storyline. It's like a treatment. Chapter 1 will be this, chapter 2, this. And I'll write that out as much as I can. And then eventually, when I feel like I'm ready to go, I start writing. And then my method is I'll write 1 chapter a day, no matter how long it is. If I keep writing, that's a bonus. And I'll just work till I get it done. Searching for Roy Buchanan, its first draft took a month. Usually it takes about 1 to 2 months to get it finished. And then leave it alone for a little bit, go back, and that's where the editing starts. And I just keep editing, writing new scenes and that kind of thing. So each one has probably taken anywhere from 1 to 2 months. It averages out like that.
So you got it down to basically a science, to where almost, and I'm thinking of like when I edit a podcast. When I first started, it took me forever. Yeah. But now it's like you have those stages or templates, if you will, and you just go like that. That's what it sounds like you're doing as well.
Yeah,
which is pretty smart.
Well, it's the repetition. It's the repetition for me. And some people, I have friends who just can sit down and just stream of consciousness, pound out an idea, and then they'll go back and write. And if it works for you, great. I'm a little more, I don't want to say disciplined, because I'm not. I'm more like, I just like to organize things a little bit, kind of know who everyone is, kind of know where I want to go. And then as I'm writing, that will change. The scenes will change. I'll stop. I'll go back. I'll rewrite a piece because I just didn't like it or it didn't make sense.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll write however many pages, and then I'll start at the beginning again, and I'll go back and rewrite that because I'm like, okay, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. We need something here. And then I'll get back to it. And the editing, I can't tell you how many times these stories are edited by me. Yeah. I am my worst critic.
Oh, by you?
I am my worst critic. So I will beat the crap out of an edit again and again until it's smooth for me before ever anybody else looks at it. I just am that way. Some people are really good at 1 or 2 edits and they've got it. And I don't know how they do that, but hey, if it works for you, good. For me, I'm just a lot more careful. I'm a lot more, I look for repetitive words. I look for repetitive phrases. I look for, if people start to talk the same as this other guy, that's too much of me. I have to get back into their voice. I have to get back into their character and be like, what would he really say? What would she really do? And that's just part of the fun. To me, that's the fun, is you're crafting something, and it may take a long time, but go ahead. Just keep doing it. Do the research. Do what you need to do.
So do you actually belong to a writer's group where you guys critique each other's work?
No, actually, I don't. I quite honestly just haven't had the time to do it.
You're your own critic.
I am, and occasionally I will have friends of mine take a look at things and sort of throw a few things at certain people and say, all right, what do you think of this? It's very hard to find someone willing to just read through the whole thing because who has the time? And I've been very fortunate to have exceptional editors through Sunbury over the years who have been fantastic at pointing things out and cleaning up my rotten grammar.
All right, so Tory, I'm going to put you on the spot in a way, but out of all the books you've written so far, is there one that really that is it's your favorite that you just hold really close? And
oh, that's a tough one. There are two.
I know. I figured it would be.
There are two, and I'll explain that. Searching for Roy Buchanan, the first of the Sweet Dreams series, and again, there's three. Mm-hmm. That one was the one that got me started, and I was able to write a really odd time travel story that was young adult but appealed to other folks without even trying, and included an emphasis on music, primarily blues music, because that's just my favorite music, and that's where Roy Buchanan came in, I guess. And I just wove a story that took several years to really get out. And to me, it's probably not the best thing I've ever written technically, but in terms of imagination and the wonder and the expansive nature of it, is my favorite thing that I've written. And the two sequels, I think, stand out really well on their own. Call It Love and Shake Hands with the Devil. I wrote three others in the years that followed, but none of them were really very good. The fourth volume of the series, I am still writing. I have rewritten it like 3 or 4 times. It will be more of an historical novel when it comes out. It's going to be very different. I can't even begin to tell you what that's going to be like. But Searching is that. The other one is, in fact, the book that got me signed to Sunbury Press. It was my second one overall, A Moment in the Sun. This was kind of deeply personal, and it came from, again, the weirdest of threads. I have a fascination and an interest in Japan, partly because of my interest in history. I minored in history when I was in college. I've always loved history, and it was the one subject in school that I was ever any good at. With regards to Japan, I took martial arts as a kid, so I was always interested in martial arts. I was interested in grappling, technical fighting. I was never any good at it, but I always found that really interesting. I became interested in anime and manga of different sorts through friends of mine. And eventually I discovered the music movements in Japan. We have traditional music over there, of course, but Legend of the Black Swan is sort of my tribute to the Japanese power pop movement, which is just an amazing wellspring of music that we would recognize, but they put their own spin on it. Power pop, Pete Townsend is the one who came up with the term in 1966 to
really?
He did that too, as I write in the foreword of Black Swan. He came up with the term power pop to describe the music of The Who, as well as the Small Faces and bands like that in the mid-'60s. And at least it's attributed to him.
I didn't realize that.
And the Japanese power pop movement is heavily influenced by the Beatles, by the Rolling Stones, later on by Oasis. And they put their own spin on it. But there's so much more. There's the jazz and the classical and the blues and all of these different genres that we recognize. They make their own. And there's such incredible music that comes out of there. I didn't know a thing about it until I started looking into it. So Searching for Roy Buchanan was really good. A Moment in the Sun was completely different because of how I discovered it. I gave you the basis on Japan. About 2012 or 2013, I read an article on the BBC about a social problem and a concept called hikikomori. It's basically extreme social isolation. It is a very serious social problem in Japan.
Wow.
At the time that I read it, there was about 1 million people in Japan who, because they do not feel that they fit in an organized, ordered society, They withdraw to the point that they do not leave their homes. That's the most extreme case. It is becoming a much more serious problem now because some of these people are starting to get older. And there's confidentiality laws in Japan that do not allow for intervention. It's one of those things where social workers can keep tabs on people, but they cannot just go into a person's house and say, we're taking you out. We can't do that. It's illegal. The person has to do that. Anyway, I read these different stories, actual stories, and I thought, oh my God. It was like I had my own flashback. It's no secret. I have suffered from depression as well as anxiety my entire life, and they don't play together very well.
Yeah. No, they
and
don't.
I had a brief period in my life in a very immature thing where I didn't leave my house for a long time because I just didn't handle a situation that well. And eventually I got out. But this was something else. And I thought, okay, I've got something. So the story, A Moment in the Sun, is about a girl that pretty much, her name is Ray. Ray was a person who self-isolated by choice as a child for her reasons. And the story begins with her running away and, doing a midnight run to get away. And then we pick her up a little bit later as she found a place to stay and she found a mentor and she got back to school and she had this mentor who was a very talented artist and who helped Ray with her own work. And now she teaches other people. But Ray's story is about basically facing your past before you can face your future. Ray's flashbacks to her family, or what's left of it, and what happened to her are things that continually pop back into her consciousness. And when she is introduced to a guy who used to be Hikikomori, he introduces her to a chat room called The Dwellers. And he said, these are all Hikikomori. This is how we stay in touch. And a name pops up, and Ray realizes that this guy is a high school classmate of hers who vanished. And everybody wondered what happened to him.
Whoa.
And she realizes it's him. And so Ray is immediately like, I'm going to get him out. But then she realizes she's got so much work to do on herself before she can do anything.
Right.
And it's not always pretty. But it was a story that allowed Ray to touch on her past and her problems, and it allowed her to look at other people's issues. And it also allowed Ray's circle of friends to realize that, hey, we all live very protected lives. We all live in different classes. There are people who suffer a lot more than we'll ever know. And it got me signed. And I still point to that one as probably one of the really, it's a favorite of mine, even though it's really, I think for some people it is painful to read. If you have had a similar situation like that, it might, but at the same time, there is no end to the story, but it's a hopeful future. And that's something I always like to put in is, none of my stories end. It's like the door is still open for something more to happen, and it's up to you to figure out what it might be.
You're listening to Conversations with Rich Bennett. We'll be right back. If you love books, you need to experience the book fair at Bel Air. This incredible community event brings together authors, readers, and book lovers of all ages for a celebration of stories, creativity, and connection. What makes it special is the chance to meet authors in person, hear their stories, and purchase books directly from them. I've attended myself, and I can tell you there's nothing quite like discovering a great book and talking with the person who wrote it. It makes the experience more personal and far more meaningful. Whether you're looking for your next favorite read, something for your kids, or even a unique gift, you'll find it at the Book Fair at Bel Air. It's family-friendly, welcoming, and full of the kind of energy that reminds you why books matter. Learn more and see upcoming event details at bookfairatbelair.org. Again, that's bookfairatbelair.org. It sounds like to me that from what I'm gathering so far, and I don't know if it's true or not, a lot of your books will also educate people.
I hope so.
Or help them out somehow or another.
I hope so.
And is music involved in all your books somehow?
Pretty much all of them, yes.
Okay.
I mean, growing up, I grew up in I'm 60, so I was born in 65, and I had two older brothers who interested me and schooled me in really good music. In the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Bob Dylan, CCR, that kind of thing. And I had all of that percolating in my head as a small child. And when you know the words to 19th Nervous Breakdown when you're 3, that should tell you that something is probably going to be happening to you. And that all kind of stayed with me. And, I became interested as I grew older. I became interested in Elvis Presley. I became interested in Kiss because that was the big band in the 70s. And I was introduced to the blues by Johnny Winter. And
oh my God, still alive and well. Wow.
Well, it was the double and live collection. My brother David had left it behind, and I was 12. Didn't know what this 8-track was, put it on, and it just blew my mind. I was like, because I didn't realize that Johnny and Rick Derringer were both in the same band, and tearing it up all through that. And as I told someone on another podcast recently, Johnny's version of "It's My Own Fault," which is from that record, was just like the one thing that really hit me, and I thought, oh, this is really different. And eventually I caught up to that all a few years later, and music was primarily whatever my format was at the time. I DJ'd country music, I DJ'd pop music, I DJ'd music of your life, old big band type stuff. Yes. So, I knew some of that. And I think for me, it was, it always worked. But the first person who ever used, and I did this for a while, and I still do it. The first person who ever used lyrics in a book that I read, Stephen King used lyrics from Bad Moon Rising in The Shining. And obviously he got permission from John Fogerty to do that. And I'm assuming that John probably wouldn't have just let anybody do that. But in any case, now and again, I use lyrics in a lot of my stories, and I get permission for it. Sometimes I pay a fee. Sometimes someone just very kindly lets me use their lyrics. Legend of the Black Swan, case in point. That song, the book is based on a song. A lady from Arkansas named S.J. Tucker, who I played a festival with many years ago. She wrote a song called Black Swan Blues with another fellow. And that song is so cool and bluesy and just eerie in its own way. And I thought, I got an idea. And that song became the template for the character Arisa. And Suge very kindly let me use her lyrics. Another good friend, Susie Brown, let me use lyrics from one of her songs for another character to sing. And it can be expensive when you're trying to pay those things. But sometimes it's just so necessary. Usually I write my own lyrics. I take my old songs and do them. But sometimes a song just will not let you go. And if it's something somebody might recognize, it might be useful. And so, it's done that to me before. And I try to work around it nowadays. I try to write around it so that I don't steal from anyone, or I use my own words, and I'm getting better at that. But music is important. And the Sweet Dreams series, case in point, I think I wanted to turn generations of young adult readers onto the roots of rock and roll. Have them find out who Roy Buchanan is. Have them find out who Robert Johnson is. Have them find out who these people are. And then when they go, and people have told me, I go looking for this music. I want to hear this.
Yeah.
You turn them on to something new and even better, I hope.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I just had a gentleman on who is a professor of music, and we were talking about that. And I thought, he was talking about how music is math, but the different chords and everything, how it changes your feelings. Yep. But then he also, and I didn't know this, he surprised me. He also teaches rock, or he did. He just retired a few months ago. Rock history.
Oh, wow.
I was like, really? He said, yeah. He said, because how jazz played into it and, just all these different things. And, with you playing music and writing and just sitting here listening to you about the different, it's like, okay, he's got to be tying music into a lot of these books.
I think just about every one of them has something to do with it.
Yeah.
Sometimes in some of my more recent writing that hasn't come out yet, it's more of a background, or it's something that will help set a mood. And maybe they hear a song or they hear some words or something that suddenly prick up their ears a little bit, and it becomes useful. But as I say, sometimes a piece of music will work for me, and suddenly it just rolls in, and it just becomes part of it. For me, the blues was a thing that of all the music I ever listened to, that's my favorite genre, such as it is. But I listen to a lot of different things. There's very little I will not listen to. And
same.
What it does is it gives you these. It stimulates you in different ways. Different types of music stimulate you, and at heart, they will inspire you to something. It will make you want to listen to it more. It'll make you want to find more of this music, find out more. And for me, it's just, it colors my writing, it informs it, and it just helps. And I mean, I will just, when I'm writing, I usually am just, if I'm not in a public place, if I'm home writing, I just blast music, whatever's on, whatever I'm playing. Sometimes it works. I think Stephen King writes to AC/DC or something like that. I'm like, hey, if it works, that's cool. Whatever's on, sometimes I'll play certain things. Sometimes I'll play Kirtan. I'll play Krishna Das or Jai Uttal or something like that to set a mood. Or I'll play music of a certain type that fits the mood and fits what I want to do. And
interesting.
And it does. And sometimes I'll just try something different. I'll try something weird. I have a manuscript that is a long way away from doing anything. It's another one that's set in Japan, but I've mostly been writing from the States these days. I'm getting better at writing about where I know a little bit more of. I just started fooling around because I'm like, I have a scene and I have somebody driving through the night along the big highway in Japan. And I'm like, what's she going to listen to? So I'm like, all right. And I'm like, oh, here is a Japanese radio station that actually streams. Let's see what this sounds like. And I found this really cool jazz station. And I thought, yeah, she'd be listening to that. That's cool. And it sets the mood. And I listened to it as I wrote. And I'm like, I like this. I like this. Now I need to go buy this album. What is this?
Okay, wait a minute. Tory, I got to ask you. Where did you find, what platform did you find a Japanese radio station you were able to stream?
I Googled it. Really? I just started searching different areas of Japan. What kind of radio stations are there? I know almost nothing about their setup. And most of them don't, I think, due to legal issues. But I found one or two that kind of sort of did a little bit. And I found one that was playing jazz in the middle of the night. And it was so cool. And I was like, okay, I know who that is. I don't know who this is. This is kind of neat. And it was I don't even know who did it. It was a really good show, and it just kind of stayed. And I like listening to things like that. I really think the world. I mean, you used to listen to shortwave radio for things like that, and now I would, I hope that more streaming like that is available. That one of these days, people can listen to music from all over the world and find something new, find something that they like, and it brings everyone together. I've had so many people say music breaks down boundaries, and they're right about that.
It does. That's why the Beatles were so good at what they did, because they would go out and to different countries, explore all the different types of music and all the different instruments. And it's just amazing. That's one of the things I love to do is just listen to different types of music from different places. One of the things I got into for a while was Viking metal.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It was pretty damn wild. I'm like, and then I just saw, talking about Japanese, I just saw a video not too long ago. It was like a Japanese heavy metal band, but they were using like your regular Gibson Les Paul and stuff like that, but also some Japanese instruments.
Yes.
Traditional Japanese instruments, and it's mind blowing.
Some of it is fantastic. Bandmade is one of those bands that is really fantastic. They are really fantastic musicians. I know. And taking traditional instruments and moving them in different directions. The Yoshida brothers are shamisen players. I've been listening to them for years. They play traditional music, but then they just blow it up with different styles. And there's so many folks like that. And social media these days, you pop on Instagram and here's a new band from who knows where that's playing this really cool music. And it's great to see that. It opens the doors.
It is. All right. So with your books, when readers actually reach out to you, and I'm sure you've had plenty, what kind of message actually sticks with you the most from them?
I think that people primarily tell me that they just like the story as a whole. They were like, this is a good story. This was a fast read. So I've got my continuity down. I've got a good flow going. Occasionally people will give me critiques on maybe where am I writing from and that sort of thing. But a lot of it also is certain people will tell me that they really identified with the main character, or they really liked a side character they thought was really cool. And I think that they recognized themselves in that character. And that's the thing I look for when I watch a movie or when I read a book. Sometimes I look for the character that resembles me or resembles my attitude. And I just kind of get into their character as the story progresses to see what happens. And someone said it one time, it was like, I would like people to like my music and make friends with the songs. And I think it was Peter Garrett from Midnight Oil. I interviewed him years ago, and he said something about, I would like people to get inside our songs and make friends with them. That was it. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting. And I thought, that's what I want. I want readers to get inside the story and make friends with my characters, and hope that if they were real people, would you like them? Would you want them as friends? And I think that it means that I'm touching someone. Of course, we always want a wider audience. We want more. We want more people to buy. We want more people to check out the books and maybe get our books made into movies or something like that. Those things come in time. And I think I've learned the fine art of patience. So I just keep writing, keep trying to find different ways to engage and do my best with it. And hope that in my lifetime, something happens that makes me think, okay, I did all right.
Right. All right. So if someone has never picked up one of your books, where should they start and why?
Well, I think it's really a matter of what catches you. If you went to sunburypress.com and looked at all my books, or you went to Amazon or wherever, I think the cover and the title will catch. Each title and each cover will catch you. It's whether it's fair or not, people judge by the cover. And sometimes I've had people at book fairs come along and you just see them and they come right over and they're like, can I look at this? And I'm like, sure, pick it up. And they'll look at the cover and they'll look at the back and they'll be like, tell me about this. I want to know about this. And that's cool. In terms of anything, I think if you started with searching for Roy Buchanan, and you were really interested in young adult, in time travel, in Japan, in music, that's the beginning of a really fun, rollicking series that will take you through a lot of things, but why not? That's a good one. I've managed to scrunch down my elevator pitch to each book now. If you're looking for something that's maybe a little edgy, A Moment in the Sun is a good one for that. For me, though, it's like I like to tell people, and this works too, I have one story that I consider fun, even though it has a lot of rough stuff to it. Live from the Cafe was a story that I wrote and I never thought would get published. I just came up with the idea from spending so much time in coffee shops everywhere I have ever been. And I mean, holes in the wall to Starbucks to whatever. I thought, if I ran a coffee shop, what would mine be like? And I set about creating the most uncorporate, strange coffee shop that I could possibly come up with. And I went back to northern Vermont where I grew up. And in my hometown of Cambridge, we had a little coffee place, little coffee diner place. And all the tourists going to ski country or going to leaf peep or do whatever would show up there. And if you hung around there, once you got old enough to go in, you would meet some really interesting people. And I remembered that. So what I decided to do was I decided to push it up into Canada. I created a tiny little town in Quebec called Harlansville. And the entire life of the town is a blink you miss it, one stoplight community, kind of like Cambridge at the time. And a former pub has been turned into a coffee shop. And it's become the life, it's like the heartbeat of the town, where it's strange. The music is a soundtrack of Canadian history. The coffee is made through this huge, weird machine, one pot at a time. Everything is mismatched and odd. And the people are equally mismatched and odd. The people who own it, the people who work there, and the people who hang out. And then I decided to make it even more fun. I said, this becomes the place where mysterious and sometimes famous people just show up to hang out and occasionally play music. You get to figure out who they are. And all of them are real people. And it's like some of them are friends of mine. Some of them are really famous people. Some of them are so oblique that you have to know who they are to figure out who they are and what on earth are they doing here. And it just became a fun story to write. And then I submitted it to Sunbury Press. This is after A Moment in the Sun. And Lawrence Knorr called it great writing. He loved it. And I'm like, well, all right. So that's a fun story. It's a fun story about growing up in a small town. And an old and close friend of mine wrote a very nice review and said that the author has hit what it is like to grow up in a small town, what it is like to grow up in a dysfunctional family, what it is like to deal with change, what it is like to deal with your identity. And I'm glad I got it right. And I think anybody that reads that will have a lot of fun. At the very least, you'll get a good chuckle out of it. And maybe it sets you up for the serious stuff that I write.
I'm definitely going to have to grab that one first then.
Well, I hope you do. And I hope you'll enjoy it.
Oh, I will. All right. So something very important. Tell everybody how they can, where they can find your books, your website, and how they can follow you.
Okay. My website is torygatesmedia.com. That has links to everything that I do, radio-wise, writing-wise, and so forth. But the best places to go are sunburypress.com. You can go to Amazon, barnesandnoble.com. If you can purchase through bookshop.org, that is something that I always encourage because they will help local bookstores and kick back a little money toward them. But really, you can go into any bookstore and you should be able to order it if it's not there. Sunbury does all of its distribution through Ingram, and they've done a really good job of helping us out. So the books are available, again, through my website, that kind of thing. And we are out there. You may not see us right on the shelf or in the window, but we are there.
They're out there. So those of you listening, you know what I'm going to say. No matter where you purchase his books, not his book, his books, make sure you leave a full review, whether it be on Amazon, Goodreads, Barnes & Nobles, Walmart, wherever you can leave a review, leave a review.
Yes, those are gold.
And yes, and purchase copies for other people as well. They make great gifts. So before I get to my last two questions, is there anything you would like to add? Usually it's just one question, but there's one question I definitely have to ask you. Okay. And the last question is going to be determined by you.
All right. Well, as we do this, we just did the cover reveal for Legend of the Black Swan. My friend Megan Arney did a fabulous cover, and we are going to have this book out on Sunbury Press and all these other places by the end of March or thereabouts. I will be at the book fair at Bel Air this summer. I'll have copies of that and all my others. There's going to be some other events. Those are all on my website. But I'm very excited for this one because Legend really took on a very nice life of its own, and it became much more than I thought it would ever be. And I think it shows growth in me as an author, if I may say so myself. But in any case, I try to make every book, every release, I try to make the next one better than any of the others in terms of how I write and trying to be original. And this has been an incredible, fun thing to do for the last several years. As I say, it is the best use of my free time to just sit and write and create and have some fun while we're at it. And if somebody happens to buy it or somebody happens to read it and like it, that's really my payoff. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah. All right, so you ready for this question? And be honest with me. What is Cal's favorite pizza?
Cal loves pizza from a regional chain called Pizza Boli's. And I think you know that.
Really?
I've been ordering from them for a long time now. And whatever they put in the pizza, first of all, they make great pizza, not too much oil. I love that. And she just loves that pizza. That one, she just loves the dough. She loves the crust. And I'm vegetarian, so I always get a black olive pizza. She loves it. I have to make sure she doesn't eat too much of it, but she loves it.
All right, so those of you listening, if you have no idea what the hell we're talking about, Cal is Tory's beautiful Maine Coon, which, for those of you that don't know what a Maine Coon is, it's a cat. Probably, I want to say they're the most beautiful cat out there.
Well, she is.
And they're very friendly.
Well, Cow is a very standoffish kitty.
Really?
Most Maine Coons that I've come across, they allow you one pass when they walk by, and if you can get to pet them, that's all you're going to get.
Okay.
Cow is a very unique one. She's a very small cat. So we don't know if she was the runt of the litter or she might be mixed breed, but she's got all the markings and all of the attitude. I rescued her from the street here in Harrisburg several years ago. And she was a very tiny, very sick cat, but she rallied very quickly. She only weighs about 14 pounds, and I don't actually know how old she is, but she is at times a very sweet cat, but for the most part, she is very much the one who rules the roost, and she's also my editor, and she is also the one that you see on my website a lot as the one. What I do with Cow is sometimes, now she's female, but Cow will slip into a character on the blog. For whatever reason, she sounds like the Brain from the Animaniacs. That very snarky, sarcastic, the same thing we do every night, Pinky, that kind of thing.
Oh my God. I haven't heard a reference to them in a long time.
Well, thankfully, Maurice LaMarche and Rob Paulson and them are still with us. And they still tour. They do sing-alongs of that stuff. They do different things. And it's very cool to see them. Rob Paulson was at an event that I was at several years ago. Sadly, I didn't get to meet him, but I did get to see him. And he seems like just the most genuinely nice guy.
Yeah. Wow. All right. So for this, you're going to pick the last question. Pick a number between 1 and 5.
All right. 4.
4. All right. All right. Now pick a number between 61 and 80.
74.
74. Oh, wow. Okay. If you had dinner with the wisest, running lips here. If you had dinner with the wisest person you know, what would be the topic?
Oh, boy. The wisest person I know. Oh, man. That's a good question.
I've never heard that question. I got to even think on that one.
I think the wisest person that I know, and some people are going to find this odd, but some people will not if you ever met the guy. He passed away a couple of years ago. A gentleman named Bob Bittner. Bob was a guy that, in hindsight, Reader's Digest used to do a thing on the most unusual person I've ever met. Bob was this guy. Bob was the guy who probably saved my radio career in the early 90s at a point when I was ready to quit. I was just in a very bad place in the early 90s, and I was in a bad attitude place. I was in a radio station and a job I couldn't stand. I hated it, and I was ready to quit. And the former chief engineer of a station that I had worked for heard me one night on this station, called me up to say hi. And I told him my situation. He said, well, there's this guy that just bought a radio station in Boston. And Bob is a very interesting guy. You, I think, would like him. And I thought, okay. I proceeded to go to Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is, Harvard, that kind of thing. But he bought a little AM radio station, but 250 watts, but it was a clear channel and blasted out like you wouldn't believe. He'd been a radio guy for years, had this incredible voice. He was this very big, imposing guy, this incredibly deep voice, but he was a genuinely nice man, very quirky. He had a lot of odd quirks to him. But he hired me, despite me not really being at my best. And I worked for him for about 8 years. I managed different stations for him. He was an entrepreneur. He pioneered his own music format, which gained a cult following. He bought dead radio stations, put them back on the air, and then sold them. He ended up moving to Mid-Coast, Maine, which I knew a lot about because I vacationed up there. I went to college in Maine, and I managed a station for him up there for a couple of years. And I became known as kind of his number two. Bob was one of those people that if you're a radio person, you just get him. Because he can talk about that. He can talk about so many subjects. He was so knowledgeable. He was so deeply intelligent. And he would talk about the strangest things, but they would always be in a context of something that he thought about. And you always were left a little bit wrung out from talking with him. I think, and I've had dinner with him, I think if we had dinner again and we just talked for an hour, I think we talk about the business. I think we talk about different topics, and I think it would just run the gamut. And I think it would be one of those really interesting talks because he never failed to have something interesting to say, even if you didn't quite understand him or you didn't agree with him. And I have had people who met him. My late mother met him once. My sister met him once. And a former boss of mine met him to find him for a character reference. And every single one of them all said, that's one of the most interesting and most unusual guys I've ever met. And so that's, I think Bob's probably the most wise person I think I've ever met in my life. Probably never meeting another guy like him.
Wow. Man. Takes me back to my radio days and some of the guys that I worked with. And, some of them were very smart.
Yes.
Some of them, I even wondered, like, why are you in radio? You could be doing something even
Yeah.
better.
I've worked with some incredibly talented people. I've had very good teachers. I've had very good mentors. I've also had raving lunatics that I've had to work with. And
done that.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's I would say I call my colleagues my radio friends because most of them are my friends. But to be perfectly honest, outside radio, I don't think we have an awful lot in common, but we have enough in common that we understand each other and we all love what we do, you hope. And it's sad that some of these folks have left us, like Bob and some other really cool people. But I think one of the reasons that I stayed in this business for so many years was because a lot of the time you work alone, and I'm much better at that. But also the people around you understand you and they understand your way because it's not that much different. And we are all united in making a difference in a very small way, even if it's just playing a request or just getting a news story when it's on right or doing something a little bit right. If you've made someone's day or did something good for them, then you made a difference. And that's why we do it. Also, as I like to say, it beats the hell out of working.
Isn't that the truth? I used to have a lot of fun at some of the stations I worked
I had a little too much at some, and I'm ashamed to admit that I got away with a couple of things I shouldn't have done. But thankfully, those were 35 years ago, and we can forget about that.
Yeah, I think those stations are no longer around where I did that at. So, Tory, I want to thank you so much, man. It's been an honor, and can't wait to talk to you again. Actually, I know we'll be talking again very soon.
Thank you, Rich. So. This has been a blast, and I'm honored to be on. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to talking with you anytime, really.
Next time, you'll have to bring Cal on as well.
She won't sit still for too long, but we can try.
Thanks a lot, Tory. Take care.
You as well.
You know, one of the things I kept coming back to during this conversation with Tory is this idea that stories aren't just something we read. They're something we recognize. Because when you listen to him talk about his writing, it's not just creating characters or building worlds. It's about understanding people, the struggles they carry, the choices they make, and the reasons behind both. And I think that's why his work connects the way it does. It's not just fiction for the sake of entertainment. It's storytelling that makes you pause, think, and maybe even see a little bit of yourself in someone else's journey. We also talked a lot about growth, not just as a writer, but as a person. And I love that he's still pushing himself, still evolving, still trying to make each story better than the last. That says a lot. So if you're someone who loves books that go a little deeper, stories that feel real, characters that stick with you, I definitely encourage you to check out Tory's work. And maybe, more importantly, take a moment to reflect on your own story. Because like he said in his own way, every person has one. And every story matters. Thanks for listening. And as always, keep the conversations going.